my guest, Judy Martin. She is founder and principal of Green Home Consulting, and she is an expert in green technology and has been now for 7 years advising her clients. And she is a source of a lot of useful knowledge, and that's actually how I met her. You were, what is the role that
moderator?
Moderator. You were the moderator at the Building Blocks, and the reason why she was chosen as one of the 2 moderators that the event had is because you have a lot of knowledge in this subject. And I really thank you for being here today. So before we went to the break, you were talking about your role as a consultant and how you can advise your clients in the type of HVAC and other kind of initiatives that you can incorporate.
Right. Well, I try to help my clients prioritize. I guess that's where I would like to start, is to say I want to help them prioritize. And what I try to think about, because everybody's got a budget, is if you have to keep yourself within a certain budget, then where are you going to spend your money, where it's going to be, first of all, the most useful. But second of all, I would say the steps that you can't easily go back and do later. And number 1 on my list is always your insulation. What's your insulation and air sealing going to be like? What's the quality of that insulation? Because you know what? You're not going to go back and open up your walls later on and put something different in. What you choose in the beginning is what's going to be there. So I always put that number 1 on my client's list and say, let's focus on that. Let's get that right. But then next would come the most important system in your home in terms of its use of energy is your heating and cooling system. So we look at that. Now, if you're trying to decide between doing a geothermal system and doing a high-efficiency system, and you decide to do a high-efficiency system, then you're not going to go back and do geothermal system in a few years from now. But if your choice is to do a high-efficiency system and you say, you know what, it's just a little bit more than I can spend in my budget, if you decide to do a high-efficiency system, either whether it be the heating portion or the air conditioning portion or both, and you say, you know, I really can't quite afford that right now, you could reduce the efficiency rating, make it a little less efficient, and 10 years from now, change to something that's more efficient because it's standing outside your house. It's something you can change. So I try to look to stay within the budget, of course, is important, and I try to look at the trade-offs of what things can be changed now and what things, which things can be changed later and what things should be done now because they can't be changed later. So if I'm actually looking at HVAC systems for a client, I can help them look at it's really more of an overview. Do they like to be very warm in winter? Do they like to be very cold in summer? How do they like to use the system? Do they like the feeling of radiant heating, which is a very efficient way to heat a home? All the different components that would go into it, and that, as well as things like whether or not to use geothermal or high efficiency, what level of high efficiency to use.
Right. Well, you and I were yesterday, and that's how we met, Destiny, in this house that is being built with radiant floor. And I don't want to go into too much detail because it's a subject for another show that I am planning to do. But what is happening, I always want to go to buy local, use local. But unfortunately, this is such a new business in this country. When you see the systems that are being put in companies in Europe or in Japan that has so many years of doing this and experience, and they are the creators of a lot of these systems. And now we are a lot of the companies maybe here with all the best intention, but you just wonder when you are putting a system you are not really familiar with, and in addition you want to buy local, but you are not so sure that you are getting the best quality at this point. How would you advise your client on something like that?
Well, what you raise is a really big challenge. As you say, some things are only available from companies that are manufacturing overseas, so it's hard to really access that. There are, of course, a couple of really big-name American manufacturers like Trane and Carrier who are extremely reliable systems that do I'll say, a more traditional type of system than a system like a cogen system that we were looking at yesterday. There also are companies that are in this country who are manufacturing the geothermal equipment. So you can buy at least domestically for those products. And I think that it's really just looking at the whole picture and making sure that the system that you're going to put in place is going to get the payback that you need to have, that's going to have a minimal amount of waste. A radiant heat system, a hot water radiant heat system, regardless of how it's powered, whether it's powered with a traditional boiler or however it may be powered, is an extremely efficient way to heat a home. But if you have the whole home with a radiant heat system, you also have to have a separate ducted system for cooling. So now you're talking about two systems instead of one system. So there's lots of different things that you have to consider when you're going to go that route. It's very difficult. But I think that there are certainly American manufacturers who do produce some very efficient equipment. A lot of clients now do air-to-air heat pump systems, and again, most of those are made in Japan. Extremely efficient, but they're not made in this country.
And going to the complexity of these systems, there is a component that we don't talk too often when we are conducting conversations on sustainability and basically new systems, and is that somebody in the family has to get educated in how this system works. I mean, you saw that mechanical room yesterday.
Yes.
So this is almost like a small mechanical room in a small hospital, but basically the same type of concept, energy and the use of the air and so on. So somebody has really in that house needs to be educated in, okay, now, there is a blackout out there, and now my system is going to be running with a battery, and for how long, and why is it making now this noise, and why am I supposed to press that button? So, and it can get very complicated. I just have a simple sub pump in my basement, for example, and I didn't find out that it was burnt until I started getting that nasty smell of humidity in the basement. I said, something is wrong with the sub pump because I shouldn't be getting this. And of course it was burnt. Mm-hmm. And this is just a simple sub pump, and already had done the damage of the smell and hopefully is something that can be quickly addressed. But when you see then a complex system like this one, that you say, well, something gets wrong, and here is a machine that I've been told that is in communication with Japan. So that's the future, right?
Yeah, I think that it is. I mean, you're quite right. In that system we were talking about, they were saying there was computers that go back to that are connected back to the supplier of the system, that are looking at if something isn't working and so forth. But it's very complex. It's not a question of going down and hitting the reset button anymore, right? We used to be able to hit the reset button on our oil burner and it would possibly get started up again. They're well beyond the reset button stage. And of course, we worry about if the electric grid goes down. That's one problem. Suppose there is some kind of hacking in the computer system. That's another problem. And we've really made our lives and our homes very complex. So on one hand, we can possibly gain very efficient systems, but we also have an exposure there.
So we need to talk a little bit about the technology and the sustainability when we come back from this break. Mm-hmm. This is Livable Cities. You're listening to WVOX. You have been listening to Livable Cities, and I am having a conversation with Judy Martin, founder and principal of Green Homes, and her website, the website of her company is greenhomeswestchester.com. I visited her website, and there is a lot of interesting information, so I really recommend you to go and visit it. And we only have one more section before the show is over. So I wanted to make sure that people understand how important in many, many cases to have a consultant like Judy be part of the project. If you go to her website, you're going to see the different components that a project like this type that will bring a sustainable component has to go through. And one of the important portions of a project like this one is the bidding process, which is that in order to select a contractor, then you go through the bidding process, and you have at least 3 bids, and you have to select the one that it's more capable of doing the work for the best price and the quality that you are expecting. So the qualifications of the contractor is very important. But one of the things that we were discussing is also that sometimes the fees connected to some of the professionals involved in the project, like the engineers, which in systems such as the one we were talking about, you need it's a must to have good engineers involved. But how can you control a little bit the fees? It's an issue because the larger the system, maybe the larger their fees are, but maybe you don't need such a large system.
Right.
So having a consultant like you on board, it's very important because you are an impartial person, and if anything, you are 100% just representing the client, right, Judy?
That's exactly right, yeah. So we are representing the client solely. We're totally independent. While we do have people that we work with on a regular basis, we work with them because we think they're the very best out there. We are not getting fees from them, but we think that they're the people who bring the best knowledge to the project, the best equipment, the best knowledge. And what we work with our clients is to look at the different proposals that are being made and to help them evaluate what the best way is to go. And there are times when clients come to us with a preconceived idea of who they want to use for a certain part of their project, and that's fine. We'll work with whomever, but we try to keep an eye on things and be an independent representative of our client to make sure that they consider all the different aspects and get the best possible package.
And after 7 years in the business, you know a lot of the companies that are doing this kind of work in Westchester, not just from the engineering field, but also construction field and so on. That's
absolutely.
Correct, right?
Yes, we know a number of builders. We know people who are doing excellent HVAC work, people who are doing home automation systems, insulators, of course, because that's a big part of something that we believe in. So we have a lot of familiarity with people in the business.
And in general, sustainability, it became something to do in 2004. It becomes like a much more attractive thing to do, and people started getting more involved and more knowledgeable, which is actually your case. But then 2008 came, the economy came downhill, and a lot of those wonderful projects that were supposed to go ahead were put on hold. Where are we now?
Well, it's been quite interesting because of the timing of when I started up my business. What I found in this area initially is that people were really, really focused on the whole subject of energy efficiency, because energy efficiency is something that can immediately be seen in your bottom line, in the cost of running your home. You immediately see the benefits if you look for energy efficiency. And when the downturn hit, interestingly enough, that side of the business stayed strong because people were still interested in how to save money. They were trying to make their dollars that they had available go further. Certainly it fell off somewhat, but that was really the thing that was of the most interest. What we see now is that the whole construction side has really picked up big time, and people continue to be very interested in adding energy efficiency. As you said, it's become much more of the fabric of what people think of now. We see it's become so much a part of people's lives when they're either doing a major reconstruction or a new build of a home. They just can't imagine that they would not take these practices into consideration because, in fact, the home is probably still going to be standing in 50 or 100 years. And, of course, we all know the energy picture will be dramatically different then. What's been added to that is that people are now also realizing that having green materials as part of their project is also something to consider because it's affecting the indoor air quality. And indoor air quality has become just that much more important as we make our homes tighter. So we make our homes tighter so the air doesn't turn over as often as I described in the beginning. And as a result, we need to be very concerned that we're not putting things into the air that we're then going to breathe and make ourselves sick from.
It's interesting, that point, and actually I'm so sorry that we are bringing this at the end of the show. When we connect not just friendly environment, but also health issues, which is when you look at the level of allergies that are being reported in this country, especially young kids, and we look at the type of materials that we bring into our homes. A friend of mine that is an architect, a colleague, she was telling me that after a big research in her home, because they were getting sick, especially she and her son, that they have a high allergies, and they find out that what was making them sick was the glue in the carpet. So sometimes you see that people is going, looking for green materials, the carpet green materials, but what's happening now with the glue? So you have to look at the entire system, the installation part of it.
Exactly.
And that the installers are aware of that.
That's exactly right. Carpet packing, in fact, is one of the worst things out there.
Exactly. So I don't know, sometimes there are these little things that grab my attention, and I don't know if you know this one, but refrigerators. You know that if you don't have a full refrigerator, you're wasting energy. So they are recommending that if you don't use the whole capacity of your refrigerator, to fill it with bottles of water, and of course you can label them as just water, so that you know that is just there to make your refrigerator, your inside of your refrigerator compact. Otherwise, you're wasting energy.
This is true of your freezer too.
Yes. So going back to, I like this kind of simple, recommendations when we can compare with these machines that are coming from Japan, and you need to talk to Japan. Well, here is another one. You can just put some bottles of water in your refrigerator.
Right. Yes, well, that's a good one. But I'd just like to talk about refrigerators for a moment, because refrigerators, in fact, are the appliance that uses more energy than any other appliance in your home. Except, I will say, except if you have a plasma TV, which even if you only are watching TV a few hours a day, your plasma TV uses more energy than a refrigerator that runs 24 hours a day. So I try to tell people don't buy plasma TVs. But back to the refrigerator. Refrigerators are really interesting because people don't realize that even the typical refrigerator made these days uses substantially less electricity than was used by refrigerators that were made more than 10 years ago. And what often happens is that someone gets a new refrigerator and they stick the old refrigerator in the garage or the basement thinking it's going to be there extra. And in fact, they're using more power than would be the cost of buying a new refrigerator.
You're absolutely right. And this was a very good way of closing our show today. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that people go and visit your wonderful website. And I wish you all a wonderful weekend.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Milagros.
My pleasure.